Okay.
The Detroit Lions have signed a couple of mysterious defensive ends, and now these are undrafted free agents. But I pay close attention to undrafted free agents when they are in a couple different buckets. Number one, when it's an absolute need,
Mhm.
um, where you're like, I want to pay attention to that, and also I pay attention when it's at positions that can transfer, maybe like a guard or something. So in this one, it's defensive end, and that's a need, and so uh, Craig, when you kind of look at defensive end on our team, just
Sure.
before we look at these two guys, how do you feel about it? It's been a big topic of conversation. I'll pull up our defensive ends as you explain how you feel about our defensive ends as it is right now.
Yeah. So what I feel about our defensive ends as it is right now, obviously we got one side locked up. We don't need to talk about Hutch, right? Like we know what we have there. But beyond that, it's a bunch of unprovens, oft injured or flash in the pan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have Marcus Davenport, who he's largely unproven. He's had a couple of good years, but what he's proven is that he can't stay healthy. That's the
Mm-hmm.
problem with him. John Kaminsky had a great first year with us. He's not a pure edge rusher, that's for sure. He's more of a bring them all over the line. And then you have Josh Pascal, who's yet to make something happen, and then James Houston, who it's like, oh, as a rookie, like, are you kidding me with this guy? And then yeah, he was hurt last year, but we were wondering if he was even going to make the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that other side, and it's kind of that one defensive end position. This is going to be a weird comparison. Is it almost like our cornerback room was before the draft? Almost like last year, where it's like, yeah, you have stopgap stuff, but I don't see anything that's the future.
Absolutely. And so when you look at the two guys we signed, you look at, let me pull that up. And we can talk about this and understand maybe there's something there. So out of Old Miss, and here's the mysterious guy that we're going to talk about
Yeah.
mostly is Isaac Ukwu. And it's mysterious because he got that guarantee money. So if you
Yeah.
follow undrafted free agents, they kind of throw some bigger money at guys that they kind of want. And you're kind
Yep.
of saying, I want you over here. So when you look at him, and here's why it's mysterious. And Craig, you kind of give me your thoughts on it. But if you look, he transferred from James Madison. And
Yeah.
so it just stats galore, awards, the whole thing, Sun Belt, first team all Sun Belt
Right.
2022. Yeah. It it's so you're just like, sweet. All right, what did he do last year? In 23, let's go. And you look, he transferred to Ole Miss, and all they have is he arrived on campus prior to the start of fall camp. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
And then
so
you go and you try and look for highlights, and it's like, oh, we had a sack against Tulane.
yeah.
And it's like, what? And it's you can't find much on him. The only thing that and it is a mystery. But
Mhm.
here's what I did find on him is that he's actually not a horrible athlete, right? So he's got decent size. He doesn't have the height, but he's got decent
Yeah.
size. Arm length is 33. That's what you want to see, right? You want to see that 33, 34. Anything above 32 for DN's decent. And then his explosion grade is kind of through the roof for a defensive end. So you look at him and you're like, all right, he is absolutely athletic enough to play the position. It's just a question of whether or not he's developed enough. James Madison's a good program, by the way.
Mhm.
Very good program. And I'm not saying it's a powerhouse or an NFL factory. I'm not saying that. Relax, everybody. But I am saying, like, hey, maybe he's got something there. It's kind of like James Houston, isn't it? Except the opposite. James Houston started at Florida
Yep.
and then went to I forget where he went, but wherever Dion was coaching.
Yep. Yep.
And then this guy did the exact opposite. Went from a smaller school and then went to play in the SEC.
In this is what's cool about this is when we look at his RAS score, when you looked at his height,
I'll see it again.
he got a red. Nothing he can do about that. But if you're like, all right, out of those four quadrants, what would you want to be really good for a defensive end? It would be that explosion grade. And so to see that be great is really good. And
Mhm.
then I was talking about undrafted free agents that you pay attention to. Well, I think there's three components now that we started this video. It's like, who did we give money to that we kind of wanted to be there?
Yeah.
And give a little incentive, like, we're trying to actually recruit you and we need you. Number two, it's like, is it a position of need? And then three, is it a transferable position? And so defensive end, I think, has definitely gotten harder over the last few years because they're
Mhm.
bringing some so much more motion. They can get cracked at any point, or there's a lot more for the eyes versus it felt like 20 years ago, you were just rushing and wondering if you're going to get chipped by a back, on those. But there's so much more going on, so it's not as easy. But still, if you can get, we've seen it with James Houston. It can happen where it's like, man, it's this guy's kind of different, and he's a little shorter but really explosive. So that's why this is something to at least pay attention to. And we got one other guy as well, but that's why I see that RAS score and it's like, all right, cool. That's all I need to see is that explosion grade.
Yeah, that's all you need to see. And by the way, if you look at James Houston, very similar. I mean, very similar RAS score. If we're just gonna, I mean, like, you let me know. You want to see it?
Let's see it.
There he
James
is.
Houston.
Like, it's almost the exact same.
Whoa, height bad.
Height bad,
Explosion,
weight
elite.
fine, explosion great. Like, James Houston, the difference is that he has a quicker first step. He's got a quicker first step, but he has worse agility, which explains why James Houston has never been able to drop back in coverage. But this video is not about James Houston. So
that is interesting. I love that. Now, the other one, let's take a look at one other guy.
Sure.
And that is Nate Lynn from William and Mary.
Oh, that's a familiar school.
Yeah, William and Mary. Who else goes there? What's his name? Let's look at
Sorsdahl. Colby Sorsdahl.
Yeah.
He came out of there, 5th rounder last year, right? Like, what are we doing? Look at those beautiful greens. That's
green. Look at the spiders. That's Richmond. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, William and Mary's right there in Virginia.
Nice. Look at us.
I think it's the first university in America.
And so they will produce a good defensive end. So you can see this guy, sophomore year. Look at all these accolades. I mean, it's just, this is on the William and Mary website. So they're putting in every last thing he's ever done. I get it. Yeah. But still, ton of production in 21, 22, 23, team captain, the whole thing. So this guy is more of a, did we see that he's more listed as a D end, but we're going to put him at, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's listed as a D tackle.
A D tackle.
We were going to put him at defensive end. And here's the thing. I went to look at his RAS score as well. And I was like, oh, man, it's really good. And then I noticed they have him listed as a defensive tackle.
Oh,
a 253-pound defensive tackle. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. He's going to be put out on the outside, and he's going to have to show that he can do something from the outside.
As we're looking,
he does have the ability to do it.
Yeah, and as we look at these defensive ends, so we got 2 undrafted free agents. We really didn't address it in the draft. Are you under the mindset of, to help your pass defense, that it's best to have a defensive end in a good rush, or do you want coverage? I know you want both, but where are you at with that argument? Coverage or pressure?
That's a really great question. I think where I'm at is I want pressure. I don't care how. Like you said, of course you want both, but I want pressure. And if you can put together a great 1-2 combo defensive end, I always go back to that same well of the Denver Broncos winning a Super Bowl when Peyton Manning had no arm left, right? Because you had DeMarcus Ware and who else was coming off? Von Miller coming off the other side. And it's like, okay, that'll work. But I'm also fine with being able to create a pass rush from interior and a defensive end. Like, if you can have 3 defensive linemen that you have to account for that are good pass rushers out of the 4, I think you'll be just fine, because you can't double them all. Yeah. And so I'm fine with that. But yes, I would absolutely love to see us put together and get a defensive end that can just play at a high level opposite of Hutch. That's the one thing I think this team is missing.
I know. And I agree with you. I think it's the priority is the rush. I think it has to be, because, this is a silly analogy, but just to use an extreme example, is if you were playing backyard football and like no one rushes the quarterback and you got your boy back there, just all-time QB, and eventually, and again, this is an extreme example, but after 20 seconds of nobody pressuring him, he finds somebody. Yeah. And so in a more realistic NFL, okay, he's looking, everyone's covered. There's a check down for a 4-yard pass and he gets 7 yards, or whatever. So it's just,
but here's the beauty of it, right? So in the last, through the playoffs and the last few games of the regular season, we were getting torched, right? Like, quarterbacks were routinely putting up over 300. Number 1 receivers were routinely putting up over 100 yards. And but the defense overall was giving up less points. Remember talking about that through the
Mhm.
playoff run? Oh, 350 yards and 150 yards for the number one wide receiver, 20 points.
Yeah.
And that was the way it was going, because what we were saying was, all right, we're going to blitz and we're going to bring pressure and we're going to leave our corners on an island and ask them to make plays. Well, we can still do that, and hopefully now we have corners
Right.
that can actually hold up that extra half a second.
Yes.
And or hold up for 2.5 seconds that it takes us to get to the quarterback. So I think we can still create pressure. It'll be fine. I just would have loved us to, but DN didn't fall to us on the board.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Did you know that I don't know if you read this, credible source was talking about how the Lions were actually planning on trading up, and originally they were going to trade up to like that 26, 27, and they wanted to get the defensive end out of Missouri.
Robinson.
Yeah, Darius Robinson.
Yeah.
And do you feel better trading up for Terrion Arnold or Darius Robinson?
Oof. I do like Arnold.
It's not even close for me. It's Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
Because
day. So they were already looking at a trade up, but when Arnold fell, they're like, all right, we'll trade up for him. The
and
Cardinals ended up getting Robinson at 27.
yeah, that's good,
Mhm.
Cardinals. And I would say that I glossed over earlier what you were saying, and you reminded me and brought it back. Is it's okay to bring pressure from other areas,
Yep.
other than just your straight defensive ends, if you've got the ability back there,
Yeah.
and we didn't have that. So we didn't have a pass rush or coverage. Like, amazing how good the defense was, and that was part of where I started to go. Aaron Glenn argument wise was I
Yeah.
think he actually is doing an incredible job, because what if we'd only have one defensive end and Cam Sutton's bad, Jerry Jacobs is bad.
Oh,
I mean,
Kindle
Vildor,
Vildor.
thank you. Bless your heart, Vildor, for
Yes.
everything you've done.
Yes. He's still
But
there.
yeah,
Back to
but
where he should be, number 4 or 5 corner.
yes, exactly. So you're right. You got to have one. That's the thing. We didn't have either one last year, so this is huge. Because again, and sorry, I'll go back to that Buccaneers game, playoff game, at home.
Yeah.
Offense is humming, crowd is just buzzing, and we cannot put Baker Mayfield away. Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield and Mike Evans just like, hey, let's go down real quick, score. It's like, and that game really was controlled, but it's just an example of, I mean, man, it'd be nice to just slow some people down next year.
Yeah. When you can't even slow down Nick Mullins,
Dude.
like, wow. And you're like, "Oh, this is not good." But found a way. I'm
Found a
just gonna
way.
be amazed when you see the offense doing the same things, arguably better. Um, another year of experience for Jahmyr Gibbs, offensive line arguably better, right? And when you see this offense continue with this defense that will be improved and will only get better throughout the year because it's young.
Mm,
Very
right.
excited.
Offense carrying us again, defense. What if you can stop some people?
That's right.
Like, that would just be, because yeah, that something happened with Cam Sutton at the halfway point of the year. The last back half of the year was unwatchable from a pass defense standpoint. And
Right.
so yeah. Well,
Nasty.
hey, this has been great. Thank you
Yeah.
everyone for hanging out with us, and we'll see all of you on the next one.
See ya.